So welcome back. This is part two where we're going to look at the week ahead. Okay, and when we look at this week, again, it's still August, so just be a little bit wary. Lower volume, higher volatility. And to add to that, maybe a lot of people would be a little bit more cautious this week because there's some Fed speakers, but there's also the Jackson Hole Symposium, and at the end of the week we will have Powell's speech. Data-wise, we've got housing data, Richmond Fed Manufacturing Index, PMI. It's PMI week, so there's lots of countries coming out with their PMI. Jobless claims as usual, durable goods, Kansas Fed Manufacturing. Manufacturing is still that sector that's really struggling around the world. Michigan consumer sentiment. I'm a big fan of consumer sentiment because we account for 60 to 70% of an economy. So what we think is massively important because it impacts the way we spend. And then, of course, we've got the Jackson Hole Symposium going on with Powell's speech on Friday. In the EU, there's not really much out at all. We've just got PMI. In Germany, PPI, there's the Bundesbank report. That's a monthly one that's worth having a little read of if you're doing anything to do with Germany. PMI, GDP and IFO. In the UK, public sector borrowing, again, just put that in there because, if the government's having to borrow more, there's a lot more sort of emphasis and concern about government debt around the world, especially, after the US was downgraded. So, it's starting to sort of highlight that a bit more. In the UK, we've got movement that came on with them, PMI and that consumer confidence again. Just remember that consumer confidence sentiment, how much we're prepared to spend or how much we're not prepared to spend if we can afford to spend it, of course, with inflation so high. Moving on to China, we've got that rate decision. It is likely that they're going to trim some of their longer term rates a little bit more. They did the shorter term ones last week, just trimmed them just slightly, so that they could move them about 15 basis points. So the key rate would likely to be around about 3.4%. In Japan, we've got the PMI, we've got Tokyo consumer confidence and CPI. In New Zealand, retail sales and PMI, and in Canada, we've got housing data and retail sales. So, every week's an eventful week. It's difficult to not say that. Especially, I trade probably more oil at the moment and have done for a while than anything else, but I do trade all the asset classes. That's just been a bit easier for me to read, I would say. But yeah, so it's going to be another interesting week for sure. So here's a reminder of our services. I'm not going to bore you and go through them on every single part. But there's lots of links there and information is available. We've just sort of upgraded all our websites, so it's definitely worth going to have a look. And we post our daily newsletters on there, so if you don't want to actually receive it in your inbox, you can always go on there and find it in our press section.